Thank you, Kelsey, and thank you to all the organizers, Haley and Cam, especially you guys have been great at welcoming me and everybody to the conference. I've attended most of the speaker series, and it's been a really wonderful experience, inspiring to see, so many different ideas being presented and projects that are making a huge difference by bringing renewable energy to our province. Before I get started, I just wanted to say that we're in First Nations territory, and I just wanted to say thanks to the First Nations for taking care of this land for thousands of years. That's actually how David Suzuki started the World Wind Energy Conference in 2008, which actually was held here in Kingston. And that was a pivotal moment in the transformation of Ontario towards a sustainable society. That's the moment when Hermann Scheer came from Germany and presented an incredible case for the move to 100% renewable energy in a very forceful way. And as well, David Suzuki was there, and the newly minted Minister of Energy, George Smitherman. And they connected George Smitherman with Hermann Scheer, and Hermann Scheer took George Smitherman to Germany, showed him what they were doing there, and George Smitherman brought that back, and the feed-in tariff was the result, and a lot of the talks we heard were about ZooShare, which is a part of that whole program. So it's incredible to see the transformation that this process started here in Kingston, actually, about 5 years ago. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the involvement I've had in all of this over the years, and it's really a personal thing. This is about you and me and what we can actually do to create what I see as, and I call, a solar village. And so that's what I'm going to talk about, all of the real tangible things that you and I can all do starting right away. So this is a video that's part of my documentary called Hope for a Change, Renewable Energy. And it is the Earth, obviously, rotating during the night, and then sunrise occurring over the horizon. And I find it an incredibly inspiring vision, and it shows us how wonderfully beautiful our Earth is. It's a little island in space, and it's a beautiful thing that we are the caretakers of, and we are the ones responsible. And this is a pivotal time that we're in. We are the generation that has to make the change to 100% renewable energy, but also we have to close the loop on all resource cycles, and we must do it in a very short period of time. At the conference in 2008, Hermann Scheer said we had 20, maybe 30 years to make these changes, so it is extremely urgent. The thing you'll notice about the Earth is that it is a closed system. There is Earth, there's the soil, there's the air, and it's finite. All of the resources on Earth are finite, and we have to find ways to close all of the loops on those resources. The one magical thing that is not finite is solar energy, and that's the sun, which comes in every day and gives us limitless solar energy and renewable energy that we simply have to find the ways to harvest. And so that's what I'm going to talk about through this talk. There was a famous Canadian philosopher, Marshall McLuhan. He called this the global village. He called it a simultaneous happening. And I believe that is somewhat true, that certainly with the internet and wireless communication, which I play a part in, there is an incredible ability for all of us, through our actions and our communication, to actually share the things that we do so that everybody around the world can understand what's possible with renewable energy and closed loop cycles on our resources. So we have incredible potential. But globalization, as it's kind of been come about has caused problems, and that's an area we need to work on. And that's why the way I like to think of this world is a new vision for this thing that we're looking at, and I call it a solar village. We are all one community. The Earth is one place. People all over the world are the same. And so we have to work together as one community to solve the problems of 100%, the move to 100% renewable energy and closed loop resources. So where did I get this, idea? Well, it's pretty, obvious nowadays, but when I was going to university at Carleton in Ottawa, I had the great opportunity to have David Suzuki come to the university and give an incredible speech about environmentalism, about the need to take care of the resources and nature that was all around us. But he also said something that really stuck with me, and that was, he described how the jobs that you all will go and take on after university, they make a huge difference in society. The things that you do are extremely impactful. And so he described a situation where an engineer, and there's many of you in here, if you become, let's say, a nuclear engineer and you start designing in a very high-paying job, nuclear missiles, he described it as, you could get paid very well. But what are the implications of that design? What are your responsibilities if that nuclear missile is used in a war at some point? What is your responsibility for the casualties that a massive nuclear explosion might cause? And that really stuck in my mind, that what we do with our careers matters a lot, and we have to take responsibility for everything that we do. And we have to think about that very hard. And so it's not so easy to do that, but that stuck in my mind. I then got accepted into engineering at the University of Toronto, and I was following in my father's footsteps, more wanting the lifestyle that he had, not quite knowing what I actually wanted to do with my life. And that's something we have to ask ourselves, and it was one I was asking in university. What am I doing? Why am I here? What is it that I'm going to do in my life that's important? And university is the time to start figuring that out. For me, I was in civil engineering, and I was fascinated by this idea of solar engineering. I started reading books about passive solar houses that required, no fossil fuels for heating the houses. There were hot water heating systems that were able to create hot water, and these were something that I had actually grown up with in Cyprus and Haiti and Dominican Republic when I was young. And I'd seen them on millions of houses, but they weren't here in North America, and I didn't understand why, but I thought they were so amazing because it's free energy. And then one of the most amazing things was these solar calculators, these little photovoltaic cells that would convert sunlight directly into electricity. And I thought, that's magic, that's genius, that's biomimicry, that's looking at nature and learning from nature what we can do to do things in a very sustainable and safe way. And so I was fascinated by this, but I also didn't get any courses in this in engineering. There was no solar engineering course. And so I was somewhat frustrated, and in the end, I was doing it for the wrong reasons, and I ended up actually failing out of engineering at U of T. Fortunately, my brother was an entrepreneur, and he was starting a publishing business. And so we ran a publishing business. We were actually incredibly successful. So I was about 19, 20 years old, and we were making a lot of money. Checks were flying in the door as we were selling magazines, and this was during the desktop publishing revolution. And I was interviewed by Small Business Magazine and had big pictures in there, and I thought, you know what, I'm a big shot. I'm going to be somebody, really important. I'm a business person, and I started to believe that, and I put up a big picture in my office, and it was a Porsche, a red Porsche 911 Turbo. And I thought, man, this is cool. This is going to be amazing. And then the next year I said, let's go for it. So we advertised everywhere. We put all our money into all kinds of things, and cash flow was a problem. We ran out of money. We didn't study business in school, so we were learning everything the hard way. And what happened was we didn't quite go bankrupt. We sold the company to a bunch of guys in California. They kind of bailed us out, helped us out. But I owed about $30,000. I was about 20 years old, and I just flunked out of university. I just failed after 2 years in the business, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing with my life? What's the meaning of all this? And I started to read a lot. I started to try and ask those questions. What is the purpose of my life? And one of the books I came across was it's an autobiography by Mahatma Gandhi. And it's an interesting title. It's called My Experiments with Truth. And I would highly recommend that you read the book. And I would recommend that you also think about that. Always be looking for the truth in everything. It's an incredibly powerful thing. I was also inspired by Mahatma Gandhi by all of the things that he did to bring down the British Empire. So a guy in a loincloth making his own clothing simply with communication skills and direct action against things that were unjust, and also living by his beliefs. So living in an ashram and growing his own feed and feeding the goats and looking after the children and mixing all religions together and proving that it can work. And that was an extraordinary thing for me. It inspired me. And there's a great story that Al Gore tells in his book about the earth, and Earth in the Balance is the name of the book, great book. But he talks about how a mother came to Mahatma Gandhi with her son, and she asked that he tell her son to stop eating sugar, that it wasn't good for him, and that because he was such an important person, that she thought he would listen to him. And Gandhi said, I want you to go away and come back in 2 weeks, and I will talk to your son. So they went away, came back 2 weeks later. Gandhi talked to the son and convinced him to stop eating sugar. And the mother came to Gandhi and said, well, why did you make us go away for 2 weeks and come back? Why didn't you just tell him to stop eating sugar right then? And he answered, well, I had to give up eating sugar myself first, and then I was able to talk to him about that whole situation. And that is an incredibly powerful thing. That is, as somebody in an earlier session today said, is be the change you want to see in others. And I have lived by that, and I know from personal experience over 25 years, it makes a big difference when you've done the work to actually put a wind turbine on your property and you put solar panels up and you've been through the process to make that happen. So I strongly urge you to do that. The next big thing is you guys are going to have children one day. And I had a huge epiphany when my children were born. And that's when you realize how connected you are to the future. We live, and once you have children, you realize you live through your children, and they're the next generation and the generation after that. And we are connected through all generations through our children. And so I felt this incredible urge to protect them and to nurture them and do everything in my power to make sure that they had a world worth living in when they grew older and that when they started having children. And you all are in that situation. It will not be long till you have this extraordinary experience of a child coming into this world, and it will blow your mind. It sure did mine, and it's something that is incredible. At the same time, my parents are wonderful people. They had a dream to have a beach house in the Dominican Republic. They talked about it the whole time we were growing up. And so they bought a beach house right on the beach in Dominican Republic. And my dad's an engineer, so I was always telling him how I'd read all these solar textbooks when I was going to school, and I thought, you got to put solar on the beach house. And I think most dads would have said, you're nuts, I'm not doing that. I'll put a diesel generator in. But we were sitting in a bar on the beach, and the bar guy came up and said, I got 8 solar panels up on my bar here, and I want to sell them. Do you want to buy them? So my dad, sure, we'll buy them. And so he put those solar panels up 20 years ago, and he's the only beach house on the beach at that time in Cabarete, Dominican Republic, that operated without a diesel generator most of the time, and it was operated on solar panels. And it was an amazing experience because despite the difficult conditions of salty air and so on, these panels kept working. There's no moving parts. They provided, in Dominican Republic, the power goes out 8 hours a day, especially 20 years ago. It was hardly ever on. So these panels provided the fan and the lighting and the cooling that was so necessary to operate a commercial operation, a small beach house. And so that was where I started to learn about how well solar panels work, even in difficult areas like the Dominican Republic. And we had 16 batteries, and we had to maintain them and look after them a little bit, but it was quite amazing how well they worked. And then around the same time, there was the Union of Concerned Scientists issuing this warning to humanity. And this was in 1992, around the time of the Rio Conference on the environment. And it was a real clear call that all life systems are in trouble. So the air we breathe is being polluted by carbon and other pollutants, the water, the biosphere, the animals, and everything was in decline. And it was 1,700 scientists signed this declaration saying we had to act quickly and we had to act now. And it was most of the Nobel Prize winning scientists at the time. So it was a clear scientific consensus back in 1992 that we had to get off our butts and start working hard now. And that's what I started to do myself. For some reason, the media seemed to miss this important story, and it's something we need to figure out. So then I started to say, when you're an engineer or somebody working in a field and you've got a problem, you've got to figure out what that problem is. What's the underlying basis of that problem so that you can actually solve the priority issues. And so this image of an oil tanker that's, there's thousands of these sort of all over the oceans shipping crude oil all over the place, kind of represents our economy that we've created over the last 60, 100 years, which is a fossil fuel economy largely. And that's what creates the carbon pollution that is causing climate change. So we have to make the transformation away from that as rapidly as we can. And that storm cloud is really a representation of climate change. Of course, these oil tankers, these crude oil tankers, are incredibly big, powerful machines. Just like the oil industry is. It's very powerful, it has a lot of money, and it's going to take a long time to turn that crude oil tanker around. So we've got a lot of work ahead to actually make this happen. And just to break it down, so what is it in the industry and so on that creates all of the emissions and pollution that's causing climate change? Well, it's transportation, it's agriculture, it's electricity and heat in all our homes and buildings. It's land use, it's agriculture. Well, that's everything. Everything in all our lives is run on that fossil fuel resource. Everything in our homes and all the buildings, everything we use in terms of growing food and so on, and everything to do with transportation has got to be transformed to 100% renewable resources and renewable energy. And the question is, how do we do that? And how do we get confident that it can be done? Well, we get out there and we start doing it. The companies behind it are pretty well known, and I just bring this up to show you because it's important when you're looking at the problem of where the fossil fuels come from, where the carbon come from. Why is it so hard to move this tanker? Well, ExxonMobil is a $400 billion company. Every year they pull in those kind of revenues. They make $44 billion in pure profit every year. You look at the Canadian government, just the federal government alone, it's a $600 billion entity. So it's about in the same ballpark in terms of revenues. But the Canadian government is $1.3 trillion in debt. And so you start to see where vested interest and economics plays a huge part in where we're heading currently. And so you have to be very clear about where different entities are driving things and what you're up against. And that's what drives the current world, and we need to address this in what we do. So I started by doing things, Lee and I, my wife and I, when we were having our children, the first thing we started with was organic food. So we would go up to the Carrot Common in Riverdale, and we would buy organic vegetables, and we mash them up and we'd feed them to our kids. And really that's where it started, with recycling and being very careful with all of the resources and turning our heat down. But I had bigger dreams. I wanted to build a 100% renewable energy powered house. And I've been reading all the books about it and telling my wife Lee, and she would look at me and go, well, I don't know about that, John. I don't see too many other houses with solar panels on them. If it was such a great idea, why wouldn't everyone be doing it? And I had to admit there was, some logic to that. But fortunately, around that time, a number of years later, after our kids were born, there was the Toronto Healthy House that was built in Riverdale. And we had the opportunity to tour the house, and it has solar photovoltaic panels, it has solar thermal hot water panels. It's actually got two parts. It's like a townhouse with duplex with two sides. And so one side was off the grid completely, and the other side was on the grid and running the meter backwards with the photovoltaic cells. It was passive solar design, so windows on the south side allowing the sun to penetrate, heating up the concrete floors on the inside. It was constructed largely of renewable resources. There was bamboo flooring. The countertops in the kitchen were made out of recycled glass. And Lee was starting to say, this is beautiful. It's comfortable, it's warm, it's modern. I love it. So let's get going. Let's start building our dream eco house. Well, before we could do that, we had to learn a few things because we had the idea to try and use a waste material called straw bales in the construction of our house. And when I first heard of that, all I could think about was 3 little pigs. Didn't one of them blow the straw house down? So, I read a lot of books. That's what I do when I get nervous about a technology. I read everything about it, and it's incredible. Straw bale is, better at resisting fire than conventional construction. It resists pests. It's just the most wonderful building material you can imagine. It's also a natural breathing wall, so you don't need vapor barriers. So super insulates, but you don't need a mechanical heat recovery ventilator, so it's super energy efficient. And as this experience showed us, you could learn to do it yourself. So what we did before we were designing and building our house is we worked on this 6,000 square foot straw bale house in Mississauga. This was 3 women got together and combined their resources and skills, and they worked to build this house together. And it's incredible. It's got thin film solar on the top of the roof there. It's got solar thermal as well. It's entirely straw bale, and Lee and I and our kids helped to construct those 6,000 square foot of walls all around it over a 2-week period, 2 weekends. So all it took with about 40 volunteers who were learning as we were going, so it's kind of like a barn raising, was how to do all of this in 2 weekends, and all of the walls were done. And it is, a very beautiful house. It's gorgeous inside. Lots of light. This is actually Martin Liefhebber. He's the architect, and of course, we decided to go with Martin Liefhebber. He also did the architecture for the Toronto Healthy House. Bathroom. And so the design of our house started to take shape, and it was something that Lee and I had dreamed about for many years. And so you can see here that it is a passive solar design on the house. So it's about the sunshine coming in on the south side, the concrete floor it's heating up. That's our main heating source. The goal was 0 fossil fuel. So one of those questions is, can you make a house operate in Ontario without connection to the natural gas pipeline and so on, and without oil or without a generator? And the answer is yes. And so we impose that on the design. So there's no furnace in our house. And its primary system is a passive solar heating system. That is the windows on the south side. About 70% of the south side is windows, and concrete floors absorb that. But of course, when you have a solar heated house, what you also got to worry about is overheating in the summertime. So one of the things you do is you build awnings. Well, if you're going to build awnings, you better do it with solar panels. So that was the plan, is to use, solar panels to create the awnings. And then you put a green roof on the roof. You take the soil that you take away from the foundation area, you put it back on the roof, right? Like, that's the way it should work. And then you grow grass on that, and that's a natural air conditioning system. And then you look, how do you keep a house cool in the Sahara, the desert? Well, they use these towers. So they open up a window up in the top of the tower, and convection draws the warmer air up. And so we use Sahara architecture to cool it down naturally, and the green roof to keep it cool in the summer. And of course, green roof also keeps it warmer in the wintertime because the snow builds up extra high in there, and that adds additional insulation. And we've got the ability to store all of the rainwater that comes off the roof. And you'll notice that all of the utilities are on the north side where the straw bale is primarily, and all of the other insulation that we use is mineral wool, which is a waste material as well. So you can see we're starting to use, reusable and natural materials in all of the building materials that we possibly could. And all of the sand that we used where we had to use concrete came from the local location. So this is the construction of our straw bale house. It's very simple. So it's a do-it-yourself open source concept. You can stack the bales just like a brick wall, chicken wire on each side, staple it at the top and the bottom. You sew it together, and that takes about 1 weekend with about 25 volunteers that we had, which we were teaching at the same time. Our kids helped out. And then the next weekend we did all the stuccoing. So it looks like a normal wall once you stucco it. You just plaster it over, and you've got the most beautiful walls in the world. And they're, like I said, a breathing wall. So you get excellent indoor air quality, but the insulation values are R50, which is extraordinary. So we have a super insulated house built with straw bales from a local farmer. For some reason, at the same time, I personally was addicted to television. I kept staying up late at night watching, crap. And I didn't know why, but I felt like I was being brainwashed in some way, like this constant advertising, especially the Olympics and stuff. It's just like, oh my God, I can't stand it. There's so much advertising. It's like every 2 minutes there's an ad on there, and it's like penetrating my brain and making me think this is good and I need to be that. And plus it kept me up all night. I just kept watching TV. And so, much to my wife's chagrin and my family, my kids were like, 6 or 7 years old at the time. And they said, you can't do that. You can't stop us from watching TV. And it was a really big battle. It was actually one of the biggest battles our family ever faced. But we did not have TV in the new house. And for 12 years, before the internet and YouTube got so big and it was so popular, it actually kind of made a difference. But it was primarily the advertising that I was concerned with. And so that's one of the things that I did was to stop that. Challenge again. So, had trouble with my own business, didn't do so well at finishing university. And then in 2001, just as we were trying to finish off the house, the entire world market economy collapsed. And all of the money that I was expecting to earn at the financial services company I was working at suddenly disappeared. So the good thing with a solar-powered house is you can sort of live in it even if there's not a lot of things finished. So it was warm enough without any energy being added. And we hunkered down. There was copper pipe sticking out, and we saved our pennies, and we all did what we had to do to make it all work. And we got through the tough period. So then we survived the next 6 months, a year, and we were able to pull through and finish up some of the design of the house. And I started working on a documentary video to tell everybody about this incredible house that runs on 100% renewable energy. This is some of the pictures of the inside of the house. Lots of light, super comfortable all year long, winter and summer. That's our kitchen. A lot of bamboo. We've got a convection oven, super efficient appliances, Paralam beams. All the bathrooms have opaque materials, so opaque glass, so that natural light comes in. And the tower where we use where the air vents out is also a skylight. So mostly natural lighting everywhere you go. And then in the greenhouse, we have a little greenhouse. We built a little climbing wall, so it goes up about 25, 30 feet. And so, you get your exercise and you have a little fun on the climbing wall in the house. So it's a really fun house to live in. We really love it. This is the green roof. So green roofs are amazing at, as I said, keeping the house nice and cool in the summertime. They're a great place to have picnics up there. This was a homemade design. So we put synthetic rubber on top of an industrial roof. And then we put Delta membrane, which is what you wrap around most houses. And it had a root barrier, and then I had to put all the soil on top. So all the soil that we dug up and around, and it took me about 3 years, like through the summer. And my dad helped and my kids, but it was like 3 years of wheeling the soil up. And you start at the bottom, and it's kind of like a shingle roof, and you go up and up and up. And it was like literally moving a mountain, and it was horrible. I hated it. I was, in tears sometimes, because it's really hard to wheel up this fairly steep green roof. And people thought you couldn't build a green roof that was that steep, but it actually works quite well because the drainage actually goes under. Anyway, it was an incredibly difficult experience, but I love it up there now, and it was literally like moving a mountain, and not many people can say they've done that. You'll also notice over in the distance, we were able to find enough pennies another year later. In 2002, 2003, I think, we got enough money to put in a wind turbine. So we've had a wind turbine for the last 10, 11 years. And so we do tours every year, and it's great to have people come up and listen to all the the noise and see how the birds like it and all those sorts of things. So I'm very familiar with all those issues because it's about 100 feet away from my house. As well, we put up some solar panels, and actually there's about 10 40-watt solar panels, and they're actually, one of them I took down and is actually on the solar charging station. So you can take recycled panels and use them for other things. We've grown our solar system quite a bit since then. In these days, it was early days. There was only about 5, 10 other people that had put solar panels on their roof and a wind turbine. So you're breaking down a few barriers, and you know what? That's important. Some of you have got to be like me and be a bit of a pioneer. If you look at the return on investment in this system, it was 70 years basically. So it was not a great investment. But somebody has to go first. You have to break down the barriers with the hydro companies, the electric utilities, and all those sorts of things. You got to start by doing it whatever way you can. So the only way we could was by running the meter backwards. And so your bill is reduced so the sun's shining, the wind's blowing, and it actually is generating more than we need in the house. So what happens is it starts going into the grid, and the meter actually, in those days, they had a little disc, and it would start to run backwards. And that brought our utility bill down. And so it was, some payback, but a very slow one. But it was also great because I was able to do a documentary on this. So you can find a YouTube. Kelsey mentioned it, but it's kind of a fun 25-minute video that explains how we built the straw bale house in a lot more detail with the interviews with our architect and so on. And so I also was starting to do tours of the house, so getting people to come up and come a look at the house. But they would never come in the kind of numbers that I wanted. There was always 40, maybe 100 each year. And then in 2003, we had the blackout. And when you have a crisis, that's when people start to think about these things. And it's a human trait, I guess. But in this particular case, it was quite valuable to me because the Toronto Star sent a photographer up, and they did a whole bunch of pictures and wrote a great article and said, oh, and by the way, John's giving a tour in 3 weeks. So, everybody in Toronto, come on up and see what a solar house looks like. And I was pretty excited. I didn't know what it meant, but we had a lot of people that year, I can tell you. I think there was 1,800 people came through in one day. And they were amazing, and they were asking all great questions about, how much did it cost for the solar system, and how much did it cost for the wind system, and what were the issues. And it's great to be able to show them and touch the the pole of the wind turbine and look up as it's going at full blast and see what the noise is like. And they all would go away, and over the years we've done it many times, thanking me profusely. So again, if you do these projects, if you're being the change, share that experience, let others into your lives, and explain what you've learned and how it all works, because it can make a big difference. This is the house of the president of the company that actually did all of our solar installations. His name is Leonard Allen, and he runs a company called Solera Energies. I've known him for about 20 years now, and he supplied some of the panels that we took down to the Dominican Republic. We used to literally put them in giant suitcases, and I put my dirty underwear on the corners, and the customs guys wouldn't like the look of that, so they wouldn't ask any questions. So we had many years working with Leonard with getting solar panels, and they grew over the years. He actually has lived completely off the grid for 20 years. You can see his solar tracker. Incredibly comfortable house. He has a Sunfrost refrigerator that uses practically no electricity at all. So he knows what it's all about. He also knows about the industry. For the longest time, and still today basically, renewables get zero subsidies. And oil companies, how much do you think they get? Well, in Canada alone, they get roughly 1 or 2 billion a year in subsidies for the oil companies. That's something to think about and ask yourself, how does that make any sense? Globally, it's probably about 300 billion in subsidies for fossil fuels. And that's what the renewables are up against. And that's what Leonard Allen said is, I'm trying to sell renewable energy. I don't get any subsidy at all. They get billions. So it's a very difficult market to work in. And then he said, Freiburg, Germany, I just got back from there, and they have solar panels everywhere. There's wind turbines everywhere you go in Germany. And the people say, we love them. And they're making money with it. And he's going, like, you got to go see this, and you got to show people and understand what's that all about. Germany has less sunshine than us. They have less wind resource than us. So why can't we do this? Is there some problem with us? So we went there. Lee and I packed up the bags. We were on a trip around Europe and France and Spain, and I said, can we just make a little side trip to Freiburg, and I'll do another documentary and tell the whole world, and it'll be great. She said, oh, all right. But it was a blast. We got to meet Andreas Daleska. So he took us on a tour of this 20-unit condo. And it's passive solar. We learned about that in one of the workshops. It's 70% glazing on the south side, triple glazed windows. It's super insulated with mineral wool, which is a waste product. It actually is consumes about 90% less energy than a conventional building. 90% less energy. So efficiency of that nature can make a 90% reduction. So if we spread that kind of technology around, we would create incredible efficiency. We wouldn't need as much energy. But of course, they didn't stop there. They put solar thermal, which provides 60% of the energy for all the units. They put solar photovoltaic up on the roof. They have a cogeneration plant in the basement. They use vacuum toilets to reduce the amount of water. They have a biogas reactor feeding the cogeneration plant. So they have their sewage, their poo, powering the house and driving the cogeneration system. And then all of the waste from that is recycled back into the environment. So they take it to the farmers and they recycle it. And it was an interesting point. They talked about, why did Freiburg become the solar capital of Europe? Well, it started in a fight against nuclear. So many years ago, in the 70s or the 80s, just after Chernobyl, they wanted to build a nuclear plant in Freiburg. And the farmers said, we don't want nuclear here. And the students said, we don't want nuclear here. And everybody got together and they went to the site where the nuclear plant was going to be, and they sat there and said, we're not going to let it happen because look what happened at Chernobyl. Look what happened at Fukushima. These things do happen, and everybody always says, it won't happen, it's not likely. They say it about the tanker cars. They say it about so many things, but they do happen. Things go wrong. Humans make mistakes. So they sat in the thing, they fought to prevent the nuclear plant. Literally, it was like a civil war for them, so they fought literally with their lives, and they won the fight. And then they started to say, what can we do? How can we transform Freiburg into something that uses renewable energy? And they started tinkering with ideas like solar thermal and copper pipes. And they created a solar institute. And that grew from there. And that's actually where the green movement started in Germany. And that was an incredible force that changed things when they teamed up with the Social Democrats. There's also these houses in Freiburg built by Rolf Ditch. These are plus energy houses. So they use a lot of the passive solar techniques, but they're entirely covered with solar panels. And in a year, they produce more energy than they consume every year. All of the units in the entire complex, they cost about the same as an average middle-class German townhouse. So we can build these things, and they can produce more energy than we need, and that will generate income for you. And they're beautiful and they're comfortable. So this is an incredibly inspiring example that we simply need to, go learn how they did it and copy it. And they'll gladly tour you around, as they did me. The other thing that the feed-in tariff that the Germans innovated with allowed for is the community built right near Freiburg. So from the center of town, from the train station, you can see the wind turbines that the community developed. So they invested, 500 community members put in money. They raised 4 million of the 13 million required to build these 6 turbines. They're in the beautiful Black Forest. It's a gorgeous area, but they're directly visible from the town, and the people love them because when you invest in something, when it's part of your community and you're getting a return on that and you were part of the whole process, you are quite happy to have that in your backyard. The difficulty comes when you don't have that kind of local vested interest. And this is one of my favorite parts. They took me on a tour of a solar factory. So this factory in Freiburg is entirely covered in solar panels. It's completely carbon neutral factory, and it produces solar panels. So most of you probably know, like solar panels and wind turbines, they repay their carbon debt from being manufactured in anywhere from 6 months to a couple years. But when you build them in a solar factory, when you build solar panels in a solar factory that's carbon, neutral already, when you build wind turbines in that, you don't have that. You're immediately in a carbon neutral situation, creating renewable energy without any carbon debt. And so these are incredible examples of what all of us can do, anywhere in the world. We have better resources here. So our challenge is simply to go do it. So all the details of that great trip to Europe are in my documentary called Solar Village, again on my website. I'll give a link later on, so check it out. So the next thing is, so what do? You learn about all this stuff, then you got to start raising a fuss. You got to tell everybody. So what did I do? I called up the Minister of Energy and I said, I want to meet with you and tell you all of this great stuff I just learned about Freiburg and how well it works and how you can implement it. And Dwight Duncan was the minister at the time, didn't actually have time to meet with me, but he put me in touch with Donna Cansfield. And I sat down with her in 2005. It was actually interesting timing because I was just about to start in a new job at Bullfrog Power. And so I had met with Tom Heitzman, the president of Bullfrog, and he had said, well, make sure the government is leaving room for the voluntary market. We're going to build 100% renewable power, new turbines, and we're going to create a market for renewable energy. At the same time, I was also telling her how the Germans had implemented a feed-in tariff. And so that by forcing, by just simply having a price that is reasonable for making a return on investment, guaranteed for 20 years, you push the risk onto the developers and they will come and the communities will build these projects. And Donna Cansfield listened and she said, stay in touch. I love your ideas. We're going to try and work to make sure that all works. But she's the deputy, Minister of Energy, so I wasn't sure where all that was going to go. So what happened was 6 months later, she became the Minister of Energy. And to her great credit, she implemented the feed-in tariff. She put in the RESOP program, which is a feed-in tariff. It doesn't have to do, directly with my conversation with her. Many, many people were pushing for that. But it does make a difference. You have to push your politicians to do these things, call them and talk to them. Now, of course, when you tell a politician to do that, you better back it up by following up yourself and implementing solar on your rooftop. So we added 1.2 kilowatts of solar on the RESOP program, 42 cents per kilowatt on that solar program. It's getting better. Return on investment, that first one was 70 years. Now we're down to 20 years on a 42-cent feed-in tariff for the solar panels that we did. So, of course, we did it. We're earning a 20-year return on investment. It's getting better. It's not great, but it's still the right thing to do. The house is starting to look pretty cool, too. So then I started on the ultimate experience, my dream job. I'd been trying to find a job at a company that aligned with my values. And Bullfrog came along with Greg Kiesling, who is the chairman, and the person brought the money and the marketing smarts, and then Tom Heitzman, who is the president, who was a Harvard grad, a genius, a brilliant guy, and 3 other incredible people, diverse talents, came together in September 2005. After 3 months getting together, starting the company, we launched the company to offer a choice. That was the simple idea. Just give consumers a choice. There was no choice at the time. you were hooked up to Toronto Hydro, Hydro One, and that was it. So the idea was, for a little bit of extra, a little bit more, you pay a little bit more, basically $1 a day extra for the average homeowner, and you could have 100% guaranteed from wind turbines or small-scale hydro, Ecologo certified sources, additional to anything the government was doing, and be a part of that revolution. And people laughed, and we were not sure if we would make it through the first year. Would people pay more? Well, they did. They started signing up really fast, and it was an incredible experience. And this is a turbine that's actually we started buying from. It's on the Bruce Peninsula, and Lee and I and our children each year pass this turbine on our vacation each year. And it was always one turbine, and Bullfrog started buying from this turbine that Glen Estel put up there. And what's kind of neat is in 2006, the first year after Bullfrog founded, we had enough customers to justify building 2 more turbines. And so it was an incredible experience to go up there, cut the ribbons on 2 new turbines. The entire community was out, all of the farmers and the mayor, and we cut the ribbon. And one of the most interesting things was what Tom Heinzman said. He said that our children who were in attendance, young children at the time, will see, there was 1 turbine and then there's 2, and they will see them everywhere, and it will become normal and it will become expected. And so that's an important transformation that our children will grow up with, and you guys are getting used to, and that's something you expect.
I speak probably almost every day to different groups about renewable energy. It's very rare that I have my son and my wife here, and I'm very fortunate to have that. As we were driving up today, we drove by Shelburne, and there are 55 turbines turning there, and then we get to Lion's Head, and there are 3 turbines, and I realized that my son will grow up thinking of renewable energy as something normal. And in fact, all of the children in this room will think of renewable energy as something normal now, and in fact, they may even question why we would use something that's not renewable. And so as much as these 3 turbines behind us are a very significant accomplishment, in my opinion, an even more profound change is to set out an environment that a whole new generation of people will grow up in, to think of renewable generation as something that should be, it's completely normal, it's part of all of our lives. And so to me, that's a profound change that will live far beyond the life of those turbines. So thank you very much.
But before that, when there aren't around, it's something that's new, and it's hard to change things that you're not used to. So it's an extremely powerful thing. But we kept innovating at Bullfrog. So not only did we offer consumers and commercial customers a 100% green electricity offering, we now offer green natural gas to residential customers and commercial customers. And we do that by collecting the waste that you have, your waste from your kitchen and so on, and it gets processed in a biogas reactor. We learned about some of that in one of the talks we heard today. And then it's cleaned up to the quality of natural gas, and it's pumped into the entire nationwide gas pipeline. And so that's how we can offer large companies and consumers a clean, green, natural gas product that is carbon neutral. There is no additional emissions because the carbon is locked up in the food products that we're eating. So this is a closed loop way of producing natural gas to heat our homes and so on. Incredible product. And what's also been extremely powerful is just by offering that choice and also branding it and communicating the value of renewable energy in a very clear way, very broadly, we've been able to get on board some very large companies in Canada. So very early on, one of the first companies that signed up was Royal Bank, and they've been a great customer since the beginning. And they're doing more and more with branches coming on board, bank machines, the screens in each of the branches. But then we had Walmart come on, and they're getting bigger and bigger. They've got 10 stores that are operated on 100%. One of the biggest purchases of green energy ever in Canada. And then Unilever came on board. Their entire Canadian operations are running on 100% green electricity. So big companies using massive amounts of electricity are making the switch to 100% green energy. And you can tell that this is going to make a long difference. This sends a message to, not just other companies, but politicians and consumers that, big companies can make the switch, and they are, and it's good for business. It makes sense. The other thing that Bullfrog has started as a part of what we've always done is something we call Bullfrog Builds. So we're starting to fund projects all over the country. We have green electricity supply and green natural gas, but we also are funding solar projects all over the country. Solar Share, Zoo Share, and many other projects all over the country. So we've expanded it across the entire country, and we offer the ability to build new projects and supply electricity in each region of the country. We're also even developing projects that are off the grid, so getting rid of some of the diesel generators in First Nations that are completely separated from the grid. It's an incredible thing. As I said, in 2008, I was fortunate to be at the World Wind Energy Conference when David Suzuki presented and Herman Scheer was there. And the great thing about what Herman Scheer presented after, I'd learned all this about Freiburg is he came and he presented and he talked about how we have to make renewable energy the biggest priority in everything we do. But then he said something really interesting. He said, think about it. Germany, over the last 15 years, has put in about 30,000 megawatts of wind energy over the last 10, 15 years using the feed-in tariff. Ontario needs about 25 to 30,000 megawatts of production capacity. So if you take what Germany did using a feed-in tariff, which we already have, you could easily get to 100% renewable energy in Ontario. If we implemented the feed-in tariff the same way the Germans did, we could achieve that in 5 to 10 years. It's completely doable. Germany proves that. So it's actually very feasible to do it. We just have to be smart about how we implement these things. There's a few problems in the way we've done it. We just have to fix those things and we can get to 100% renewable energy. The documentary is about 60 minutes long. There's tons of other information on it, and it's on my website as well. So the other thing that we started to address is the food. We started with the organic food for our kids, but we've continued to do that. We grow vegetables in our backyard. We've got a herb garden in our greenhouse. My son is the real expert at it. He's gotten into permaculture. If you haven't heard of permaculture, check it out. Read the design manual by Bill Mollison. It's the most incredible way to design not just farming, but villages and houses. It's an incredible process. And just down the road from us is an organic farmer that we now buy most of our vegetables from. So get involved with local communities, grow your own vegetables, buy local, buy organic, and look for permaculture. Beautiful things come out of it. That's my 2 kids fairly recently. But it doesn't end there. We've got to do more. So what I've been doing is I went down about 5 years ago, I went to Canadian Tire. I bought a solar panel, I bought a charge controller, an inverter, and a deep cycle battery. All those things are available at Canadian Tire. I took the idea of a solar calculator and I said, why can't we have solar computers? So I built this desk and I run my computer completely off solar power, and I brought it to work and some people got interested, but we got to do more. So I actually bought a very old boat, a 1974 fiberglass boat, 35 feet. It had a gasoline engine in it. But we can't run our engines anymore on gasoline. We got to switch to electricity. And so I took the gasoline engine, we put an electric motor in, put some big batteries in, and for 4 years we've been sailing mostly, but when we do need to motor, we've got enough power to go across the lake. So electric motors are incredibly powerful. They're quiet. They don't pollute. We get it from Bullfrog Power in terms of the electricity that we use to charge it up, and it's so easy to maintain. It's way easier to maintain than gasoline. And of course, we've switched to the Bullfrog Power edition of the Chevy Volt. So Bullfrog has partnered with Chevy to have a specific version of the Volt electric car that runs for the first 2 years on Bullfrog Power electricity. It's an incredible car. It can go 40 to 80 kilometers on pure electric energy, but it also has a built-in generator, so you can go very long distance. It's a very flexible car. We love it. It's been fantastic. We've had it for a year. It's reliable. It works. But it doesn't stop there. You know, a big part of what's consuming electricity is our cell phones and other devices. And so that's why I started this project with 3 other friends, young people about the age of most of the people in here, to start a way of charging your cell phones and so on with our PowerBar product. And so we've developed that. We did crowdsourced funding. We've used open source technology to try and build this out. We've used renewable materials or recyclable materials, so mainly aluminum. The best aluminum you can get is from recycled resource because it's much less energy, glass and so on, and all of the panels can be recycled, as all of the batteries are also must be recycled. And we did a Kickstarter campaign and we raised $7,000 to build 2 more. So the prototype's in the lobby, and we're building a couple more, and we're hoping to build lots more. This is our house after 12 years. We now have 6 kilowatts of solar on the awning. It earns about $500 a month in income, and the return on investment is around 6 to 10 years, depending on how the production looks like. And we've got solar thermal, so things don't happen overnight. You do what you can as you can do it. It's starting to get incredibly profitable. And in 20 years, we'll go off the grid. The lithium batteries will be there, and we'll have 0 utility bills. It's 100% renewable energy. So my website is johnduncanwilson.com. All the videos, all the stuff I talked about is there. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your patience and listening to me. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
Thank you so much, John. I think it's pretty safe to say that everyone here at SEEK learned an incredible amount from your speech, and we can all take away the fact that there are so many different ways that you can get involved in sustainability initiatives, and it's just unbelievable to see someone who's done it really in all aspects of their life. I think from everyone here at SEEK, thank you so much for coming here and speaking to everyone today.